What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Me. Aaron, how you doing as we let people filter in? This is the pre-show where we get to talk about the fact, okay, I'll hit you with a completely unrelated question, Aaron, to warm you up. So Dallas has its first quarterback that's gone 3-0 to start the season in ages. I know Dak Prescott has been paid all the money, but you're local to Texas too. I know that there's an undercurrent of Dallas Cowboys fans that feel like Dak is the problem, and whether he is or not, this is giving me major shades of the Cutler McCown situation right now, because if Dak comes back and loses, there are going to be real people wanting Rush back in the game, you know?
Yeah, well, and if there's anything I've learned by living out in this area is that Cowboys fans are usually not overly rational. I mean, just to give you an idea, I have a neighbor right down the street from me that took all of his Cowboys gear out to the street after they lost that playoff game and burned it all in the street. Keep in mind, we live in an HOA in a relatively new community, and he burned all of it in the street. And it's like, Really? Like it was that
No.
serious. Oh yeah, it was bad. And
No.
he denounced his Cowboys fandom, said he's never watching a game again. And what was he doing on Facebook the first week of the season?
Complaining about the
Talking
Cowboys?
about the Cowboys. Yep. No. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I don't know. Are you going to go to the game? Because I'm still undecided.
If I can come up with $150, yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
Like, NFL tickets are hard, man. The nice thing is, when the game's in your backyard, it doesn't feel near as bad about like, you don't feel near as bad if things go south. But
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so as you're a Boomer Sooner OU fan, congrats. I think.
Can we not talk
Look,
about that?
the
That is the
reason-
one thing I don't want to talk about.
The reason I bring it up, Aaron, is because Baylor just lost a big game against OSU yesterday where it felt like we were shooting ourselves in the foot the entire game. And all I could think of, because my parents were in Waco, was OU and Baylor were great examples of the dangers of going to football games sometimes, because you're sitting there like, I know what it's like to be in the stands for those kinds of games, and it is the worst. Like, honestly, it'll ruin your month just sitting there in a stadium with the air just taken out. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of effort that goes into tailgating, goes into the drive out. At Cowboy Stadium, I remember I got free tickets, Aaron, to the Cowboys playing the Tennessee Titans on Monday night at one point. And can you guess how much I paid to get in and out of the stadium? Remember, free tickets.
I would guess. Are you talking about like concessions too, or are we just talking parking?
I'm talking about parking. Like,
yeah, I would guess probably anywhere from $50 to $100.
$70 to park a mile away.
Like, yeah, I was going to say, that's not even at the stadium. You want to park at the stadium, it's $150 minimum.
Right.
And frankly, that's even, I don't know. Yeah, no, I feel you. The way that they have AT&T Stadium set up, which is weird because the baseball field, Globe Life Field's right next to it, and Globe Life Field's not nearly as hard. But the way, I think it's because AT&T is like 100,000 people. It's something.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely huge.
Yeah, I've been to 2 games there, and one of them was during COVID. So we actually parked at the Panda Express on the other side of Collins. And that was good, but that was during COVID. And then the other time we parked next to like L3 and kind of a little further out. And dude, it took us just to get oriented because we just moved out. It took us like an hour and a half just to figure out where we were and get back. And then once you get in the car, then you got to figure out how to get out. And yeah, it's a mess. And that's kind of why I'm
piled up. Like,
exactly. And that's kind of why I'm weighing, like, do I really want to go to the game? Because like you pointed, you said $150. I don't know when the last time you checked tickets were, but nosebleeds right now, anywhere in the top, the 400 sections are still going for like $170, $180. It's like, yeah, I just can't. I don't know that I could justify that.
Goodness.
Because I mean, let's be honest. I mean, really, watching a game on TV is a heck of a lot better than watching a game
in
person in terms of viewing experience. So we'll see. I don't know.
I don't know either. But I'll tell you what, Aaron. Thankfully, we can talk about that game when we get there because we've got a nice quorum of listeners. I know you've got a schedule to keep. You ready to roll? Okay. So this is going to, trust me, if this goes south, this isn't my problem. Homage sent us some sweet shirts. They sent us an NFL Blitz, like Walter Payton blue shirt that is awesome, as well as a couple others that if I get the time, I'm going to show them off on the channel. But shout out to Homage for the shirts. If you want one, ask us how to get one. We'll shoot you the link. They're really, really comfortable and rad. But anyways, you ready, Aaron? I'm ready.
Let's do it.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Me, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, right here on the Windy City Gridiron podcasting channel. And I am here with Aaron Leming as we talk through a New York Giants loss in the Meadowlands. In a 20-12 contest, the Bears fell, kicked 4 field goals, muffed a punt at the end. Honestly, a lot of mistakes, Aaron, but I don't know about you. I actually feel better coming out of this loss than I did coming out of the Texans' win because I felt like Fields showed a little bit of progress. Now, I know from talking to you in the pre-show, that's not quite how you felt. So tell me, how are you feeling, Aaron?
Well, I think there's multiple levels, right? Multiple levels to this just because, yes, they are in a rebuild. Fields did, in my opinion, look a lot better. Did he look great? No, but he did look a lot better considering the circumstances. But I think for me, the biggest concern that I have right now is the coaching, man. Like, you're in a rebuild, and I understand that obviously coaches aren't going to look at things the same way as fans are. Like coaches aren't going to look at this and say, yeah, we have the leeway to lose as many games as we want. But the reality of it is that this is the least accountable that they're going to be in the win-loss column the entire time that they are in Chicago. This is a time to take chances. This is a time to figure out what you have at Justin Fields and let him throw the ball 35 to 40 times a game. This is a time to take chances. And I feel like the Bears are doing the exact opposite. And that's where, again, a lot of people want to point to the offensive line, receivers, all that stuff. And that's fine. But this is the same thing that we've all been talking about all throughout the offseason, where people excuse us. Oh, Poles has got a plan. Everything's going to be fine. These groups are going to be better than everybody thinks it is. The national media hates them. These aren't as bad as they think. And now all of a sudden, that is what is the blame for Justin Fields. So it's like, that's where the frustration comes in. The wins and the losses I don't care about, but I do think that in order for them to develop this roster, especially offensively, they've got to get a lot more aggressive and they got to get a lot more creative.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know on YouTube I was crowing about the run game's creativity. And I mean, it felt like, Aaron, to me at least, after seeing a whole bunch of they'd pull guards to run G lead. They'd have Kari Blasingame in at fullback. They'd use toss actions to both hit on outside and insides of the formation. They probably ran 4 toss plays today. All of them went for 5. 2 of them went for 10 yards, except for 1, which was a loss of yards, partially because Tristan Ebner didn't read his cutback lane correctly because he's a rookie running back. That stuff happens when you're a 7th rounder. It was bizarre to see the running game that had been so creative suddenly, if you saw what I saw, Aaron, become a whole lot of take the snap, hand it off, run inside zone up the middle, hope, 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of thing. And it certainly didn't put Justin Fields in positive scenarios where it certainly didn't look like the offense had a great plan to handle the blitz. We had a couple of nice moments where Fields showed his athleticism. I thought he looked more decisive today overall, Aaron. I mean, he's not going to get credit for a lot of the third downs he converted when you look at his quarterback stat sheet, because it won't show you the rushing yards, of which he had 5 carries for 53 yards. And a lot of that really was understanding, okay, nobody's open, they dropped into zone, I can pick this up with my feet, and just going out and making a play. I thought Fields really did look solid today. And like you're saying, it's bizarre to me to see the coaches put the Bears in a situation where not once but twice on 3rd and relatively short, like 3rd and 4 or less, they ran the ball. They got some yards, but not all yards. And then they either kicked a field goal or punted when going forward on 4th down would have been, at the very least, an easily defendable decision. Because sometimes, Aaron, it feels like coaches try to go for the safest call, but there is a point where playing not to lose just loses you the football game. Very John Fox-like, right?
Yeah,
and so if this kind of stuff can't change, where we continue to see a defensive head coach playing defensive head coach football, run the ball a lot, limit your quarterback's opportunity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I think that's going to be a real problem. But for now, I guess at least we have an offense that moved the ball a little more than usual. Fields cracked 150 passing yards. That feels kind of momentous, right?
I mean, that is such a low bar. That's crazy. And he had, 120 of those in the first half alone? Yeah, it's crazy. You know what's funny is I'm watching the Packers and Patriots game right now. And this is something that I wondered in game. And I'm going to ask you this because I'm curious. Is it just do you have to sign a contract as an offensive mind that once you come to Chicago, you cannot throw a slant?
Ugh.
Because I don't know how many times that we saw it over the last few years in Green Bay. I mean, the Green Bay has killed the Bears with slants, right? This is something that could drastically help the passing offenses, especially in those types of situations that you just talked about, where it's 2nd and 3rd and short, and you just need to get something momentous that's not a run. And yet correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that the Bears have called a single slant the entire season.
So they called one. It was on 3rd and 16. It was to Equanimeous St. Brown, and there's a decent chance that you were firing off a tweet about how disappointed you were in Fields' sack and missed it because the next play they immediately punted. It was in Green Bay in week 2. But you bring up a point that is kind of unrelated to the Giants game, but I do want to mention it, Aaron, because I do think Madden has conditioned us that slants are easy. And the more football I watch, you especially see this in college football, and there's going to be a memory that you have because there's just no way you've not seen this in a college game. Slants are one of the most dangerous passes in football. People don't really talk about how if the corner gets inside on a slant, you get the interception that Davis Mills threw against the Bears, where all the corner has to do is put a hand on it, ball tips up in the air, and you're just dead in the middle of your formation with the ball up. Slants are tough because if you miss a little bit, it's a pick. If you miss out in front a little bit, it's a pick. If it gets deflected, it's probably a pick. And if you catch it, I mean, it could go for a touchdown, no doubt. But when you're trying to play with timing or you're worried that your offensive line could be a problem, I can understand staying away from it. Not necessarily that's like great reasoning, but if we're already talking about a conservative offensive coordinator, Aaron, he's definitely not going to hand Justin Fields the ball when the guys that are throwing slants, I mean, it's not going to surprise you, Aaron, that it's Tom Brady, that it's Peyton Manning, that it's Aaron Rodgers, that it's Patrick Mahomes. Like, when you think of the guys that kill people with slants, shocker, it's the top 5, top 10 quarterbacks in the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's definitely. I would be very curious. I know you're much more of a numbers guy than I. I would be really curious to know if slants are still one of the more high percentage passes in the league now. I mean, obviously things have changed considerably in the last 5 or 10 years, but yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting because, I don't know, maybe you disagree, but and again, I understand you got Aaron Rodgers, you got a better offensive line. I think receiving targets are pretty comparable, at least in my opinion. But looking at what Green Bay does versus what the Bears do offensively, they don't even look like the same offenses. No. And it's kind of weird to me, especially even like in the running game. You know, you talk about when David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert are both healthy, you don't see that 1-2 punch, right? You see David Montgomery's the lead guy. Khalil Herbert is that, you know, the backup running back that gets some touches. So it's interesting to kind of compare the two. And, you know, as I'm watching this game, it's like the Patriots up 3-0, just forced a turnover and they're at midfield. So I don't know, man. I had low expectations for this offense, but I think even my expectations have been extremely let down because, I mean, historically speaking, especially from the passing game, this has been a 1970s offense, and that's to me a little concerning. And I don't know, man. I don't know how you properly develop a quarterback in year 2 doing that.
So the irony is, if you had talked to me about that this last week, Aaron, I would have completely agreed with you. I feel like I'm going to sound like I am just blowing sunshine, right? Yeah. But in this week, we went up against a blitz-heavy offense or a blitz-heavy defense. Fields got smoked. He got hit like 10 times today. But, Aaron, we saw a young quarterback have, I think, his clear best game of the season, even amidst constant pressure. I thought Mustafa had a terrible game. I mean, when I'm noticing 67, well, I mean, yeah, but when I am noticing him in the middle of the game, getting smoked by Dexter Lawrence, number 97, who had himself a world-beater performance, it looked like. I mean, he was getting everything he wanted. Lucas didn't play well. Braxton Jones didn't play well. For some reason, it felt like we had no hot routes, which I'll take a look at in the All-22. And yet, Fields was one of the only reasons, because like you said, the running game really wasn't working. Hey, 12 points ain't much, Aaron. But the Bears had I think it was 3 trips to the red zone, mostly because number 1 found a way in some cases. Yeah. And that is progress. And I would have agreed with you last week. The Bears' offensive system and personnel is just making it really hard for Fields to develop. And here he is with time, no pressure, and he's missing wide open dudes. This is bad. I even said as much last week. Yeah. But this week, script flipped. He had very little opportunity. The personnel around him kind of let him down. I mean, I know I don't want to over-focus on 2 plays, but Mooney not catching a ball that came in at his shins that we've seen Patriots receivers and Green Bay receivers literally catch for years. I mean, literally catch those things for years. And then Dante Pettis not catching a ball where it was just him and his hands and his upper body all alone against a defender that was driving into his lower body and he couldn't quite hang on to it. Like, those are the plays that you would hope that better receivers help you out on, let alone shaking loose on some things earlier. Fields developed and showed progress amidst a bad situation. I would be stunned if in the film room Justin Fields is going to be told you played poorly, and I don't think he feels near the same way he did. If anything, Aaron, I find it encouraging that after a performance that Fields himself called trash last week, he responded with what felt to me like a calm, decisive game against the blitz. Whether he was decisive with his arm or with his feet, he was decisive. I also want to see Fields. He's never going to look like a West Coast quarterback, but I kind of do want to see Fields, kick the ball out on time. A few more times. Like right now, it looked like he played much more on time in the intermediate passing game, and certainly more on time on the deep throw that he had to Mooney. But let's get a couple more short throws. The short throw he had to Mooney on the RPO came out a little bit slowly, but you know what? It was progress. And the stat sheet's going to say 6 sacks. That's no good, even though 2 of them were him running out of bounds for 0 yards. But I definitely feel like Fields' 9 for 20 stat line doesn't show what probably must have been 4 to 5 throwaways among a couple other tight end completions. And overall, I really thought he took a step forward today and reminded us this is why he has 17 games, assuming that he can play all 17 games, because this offensive line has me wondering, can he? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair, especially, kind of looking forward to just even next week, man. I mean, you're looking at that defensive line of the Vikings, and that's not going to be an easy one either. No, I agree. I do think, again, I don't think Fields played super well, but considering the circumstances, I mean, I thought he did completely fine. I thought it was a massive step up from last week, which, I mean, I guess maybe isn't saying a ton, but I think. Yeah, but I think, again, this is kind of getting back into that territory of what we've seen, like, even if, and again, I'm not comparing Trubisky and Fields, but I think when we go back in the beginning, when we were looking for flashes from Trubisky, this is the same type of stuff that we saw from him, where it was like he'd make plays and the talent around him failed. And, and that's kind of, at least to me, I feel like kind of going back to the offseason plan, I would have much rather have seen them put a ton of resources, as much as they could, into that offensive line and have the receiving core that they had, because really they didn't put a ton of resources into the receiver. And that's exactly why, because I feel like when Fields actually has time and when he can actually move around in the pocket, he's not worried about, maneuvering the pocket nearly as much. I think he's a much better quarterback. But again, these are the kind of small things, and we've talked about it personally. I've talked about it in articles I wrote, and I'm sure you have too, where development with quarterbacks is not linear. No. So obviously you look at it from Zach Wilson's perspective, Trevor Lawrence's perspective, Mac Jones, all that stuff. But even within each game, it's not going to be a steady incline every single week, and I think we've kind of seen that, where week 1 you can hang on to the second half of the game. Week 2 wasn't a whole lot to hang on to. Week 3, absolutely nothing to hang on to. And I think this week we're kind of back into that kind of I would say close to a week 1 performance where Justin Fields did a lot more good than he did bad. And I think that's just kind of the product of the situation that the Bears are in and that Justin Fields is in because of what is around him. And I think obviously he's not without blame for some of this stuff, but at the same time, how can you expect him to get a lot better and develop when the offensive line is horrible, the receivers are horrible, Cole Kmet's terrible, like they don't have any good tight ends right now. Like there's no real redeeming thing outside of maybe Darnell Mooney. And let's be honest, man, Darnell Mooney, for as much as everybody wanted to talk about him as a actually true number 1 receiver, I think we're seeing it again like we did last year if you ignore his numbers. Darnell Mooney is a really good number 2. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But he is not the traditional number 1 that you can rely on and run your offense through. Even with some of the numbers he had today, he still had that pass that he should have caught. There are still plays that he has to make, and he's not making them. So, again, it's a product of the situation, and they're doing Fields no favors. But, again, I think that this is something that you can at least hang your hat on and say, okay, let's see what happens next week. Hopefully we'll start seeing some 200-yard games, and maybe by the end of the year we'll start seeing some 300-yard games. But also knowing that this isn't going to be an up, a staircase. This is going to be a little bit of a wavy line.
Totally. I mean, I made the same argument I'm about to make for Mitch Trubisky, so it's only fair that I make the same for Justin Fields, which if I'm already making the same argument for both, maybe, the proof's in the pudding, but we've got 13 more games to evaluate anyways, Aaron, so we're just going to sit and wait. But I don't think that it's fair to a mobile quarterback like Fields to just look at the passing box. You have to include the rushing yards. And with the rushing yards, he was, okay, so if you think about his stat line as if all of his runs were dropbacks, he was 17 for 28 on his dropbacks with 215 yards, an average of about 7.67 yards per play with like 3 major third and longs picked up with his legs. Obviously, it looks better on the stat sheet to complete a pass and have Herbert run for 20 yards, even though the pass is easy, because it looks like a 20-yard pass. But it does mean something to me that whereas last week I thought he was very, very behind when it came to snap to decision, this week he made not 1, not 2, but multiple plays where people can say he pulled his eyes down. I hear you, but he made a quick decision. He went out and got the play with his feet. He did what we wanted him to do, and ultimately the Bears offense benefited for that. I think that matters. I mean, when I look at Fields right now, look, what I'm about to say is going to frustrate a lot of Bears fans because it's going to sound like I'm angling towards the exception and not the rule. But the Bears, Aaron, have put Justin Fields in position where we have to assume that he's going to have a Josh Allen jump next year, or else nothing's going to make sense. I mean, Josh Allen, if memory serves, didn't throw for 3,500 yards in 2019. He did not statistically play well, in part because the offense around him was not very good. And so days like today are more of what I would expect from Fields going forward, where the Bears offense got beat up and he still found a way to be, I don't want to call it like productive, but he found a way to put his position or his team in position. He found a way to keep his team in the game for the overwhelming majority of the game, even if his head coach, and this is me taking a shot, has no guts to go for it on a 4th and 3 after an inside handoff at 3rd and 5, which I don't really understand. Like, I want to understand some of the play calling. I can't believe it's week 4 and I'm already doing the play calling thing, but you don't have to call a drop back pass to do something more creative on 3rd and 5 than an inside zone handoff that might have had his own read tag on it. I mean, you can use, Aaron, have you seen what I've seen? Because inside the red zone, when the Bears line up in a jumbo set with 12 personnel and they do that play action boot with Fields where the running back kicks into the flat and they have another receiver run a corner route on top of that, that play has been money. They've used it like 3 times. They've scored on 2 of them, and they picked up a first down on the other one. Like, where is that? Where is a pitchback pass or a pitchback run? Where is anything unusual, honestly, or more usual than handing the ball off so that Dexter Lawrence can eat Sam Mustipher's lunch again? Like, there were a lot more problems than I had in this game than Justin Fields. I actually thought Fields played quite admirably, if I could say so. And if we got this Fields for the entire season, Aaron, this was the Fields that I was expecting to have to defend. A Fields that hits his intermediate shots, that got closer to taking his checkdowns. Little things like that second or the 2nd and 4 scramble he had where he looped out to his right, drew a linebacker down on him, and dumped the ball off to Trey Wesco, who, had he caught it, has at least a first down, if not a little bit more. Those are the plays that we wanted to see because last year he couldn't complete any of them. Right? Yeah. Last year was a mess when he was doing that. It's taking incremental steps forward. But, I mean, we got to talk about the real story, right? The Bears' run defense looks awful. And if the Giants are going to just ram it down your throat like that, the Bears have got some big problems to solve in the win-loss department. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and I think we kind of knew that going in, though, right? If you look at this, like the Bears have had a really good defensive line over the last few years up until this year, and obviously scheme fit, age had a lot to do with why we're looking at guys like Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman, Bilal Nichols, Roy Robertson Harris, who's no longer here, like all those guys. And I think that that's kind of been a little bit of an adjustment because I think when you look at this, especially this interior defensive line right now, I don't think they're helping out the linebackers at all. And 2, I think when you're looking at it's like when you're starting nose tackle is a guy in Angelo Blackson who has his moments, but that's still not your prototypical. It shouldn't be your prototypical nose tackle. Justin Jones has been a lot more bad than he has been good, at least in my opinion. They just don't really have a lot of talent up front right now on either side of the ball. But I think defensively, it's getting to a point where, a lot of teams are just going to say, okay, well, if you don't want to let us throw the ball, then we're just going to continue to run it. And it's just crazy to me that the Giants lost to 2 different quarterbacks today and were basically going wildcat for that last drive, and they were still able to move the ball. It's like the Bears know that the run game's coming, and they still can't stop it. And I think that is very concerning to me, but it's also somewhat predictable because, again, they don't really have one blue chip talent on that defensive line right now, especially when you're looking at the interior. And Robert Quinn's doing the same exact thing that he's done every single year, pretty much since he's been in the league. It's 1 year on, 1 year off. And that was why I really wanted to see them deal him this offseason because I don't think his value was ever going to be higher than it is right now. So, yeah, man, they can't get to the quarterback and they can't stop the run from the defensive line. That's a huge issue, especially for a defensive coordinator and a defensive-minded head coach. that do not like the blitz a whole lot, it's going to cause quite a bit of issues. But for all that being said, they only gave up 20 points. So I mean, for as bad as that feels, I think if the offense was actually moving the ball, I mean, look at the Lions. Look at what the Lions just did. Like, look at what the Lions have done almost every single game. Their offense scores a ton of points, and their defense is terrible. The Bears are the exact opposite. Their defense has been bad in areas and, whatever else. But at the same time, they're still only giving up 17, 20, 22 points a game. It can be a lot worse than it is.
So, Aaron, I feel like so I see you all over White Sox Twitter. I know you're a baseball fan. Yeah, I feel like the Bears defense is like that starting pitcher you have that's like third in the rotation, where he rarely gets shelled. It's very rare to see that guy go out there, give up 6 runs by the second inning, but he's also rarely going to pitch less than 2, or rarely going to allow less than 2 and pitch any shutouts. The Fangio defense that the Bears have come from, the Sean Desai defense, look, I'm not about to try to compare the two more than any. I feel like fundamentally any offense can hang 20 on the Bears. That's the downside. The bright side is fundamentally any offense could be held to 20. But right now, it feels like when the Giants ran what felt to me, Aaron, like 2 plays all game long, they ran run to the right, and then they flipped it to the left occasionally, and then they ran a bootleg off of it, and they still marched their way to a commanding lead, or maybe not commanding, but as soon as they scored to go up 7-3, they never lost the lead. Because anytime the Bears had a field goal, they answered with another field goal. And I don't know. I feel like the other thing that needs to be talked about, we'd be remiss if we didn't, is that as soon as the Bears' run defense finally gets a stop, so the opposing offense goes into pass mode, they have an obvious passing down. And what do? They target number 6. And what happens? He gives it up. Like, I want to be... So there's a lot of talk right now about how Luke Getsy and Matt Eberflus do not care about developing players. They're just trying to win games. And part of me keeps looking at this. Well, you and I talked about this before we went live, Aaron. I want that to make sense. But right now, they had a plan to rotate guards all the way through week 4, for crying out loud. They're having Kyler Gordon learn nickel corner and outside corner at the same time. And Aaron, he's not a bad outside corner. When they actually let him play outside corner, he looks like a normal second-round pick rookie, but he is getting killed on the inside. And is it going to really shock you when I tell you, Aaron, that normally, whether it's UDFAs that sit in a system and learn for a little while, these nickel corners, they're hard to find, and normally they have a little bit of veterancy, because NFL nickel might be one of the hardest positions on any defense to play, and it's definitely really tough in the modern day where Justin Jefferson and the best receivers on the other team are all going to line up in the slot. I can't help but feel like what we are seeing with Kyler Gordon is not the product of a talented second-round pick, quote-unquote, just being bad. I feel like he's getting done dirty by his coaches, because you want to talk about setting somebody up to fail. Obviously, you want to see Kyler Gordon play his leverage a little bit better. Obviously, you want to see him adjust to NFL speed a little better. Obviously, I'm not saying that he's playing well. I am saying I feel like Kyler Gordon is not being allowed to focus on his transition to the NFL and is instead being completely overloaded with responsibility and just getting torched on account of it. And if you need any proof, just watch the way he sucks up for play action, which, it's not a problem exclusive to him either. The whole linebacking crew and Jaquan Brisker are all massively overplaying play action right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, and that's kind of what it goes back to, man. Like, we talk about Justin Fields and we look at the defense side of the ball, and yes, they are giving guys like Kyler Gordon an opportunity. Yes, they are giving guys like Braxton Jones an opportunity. But then you start looking at what they're doing with, Kyler Gordon, and then you see what they're doing with Tevin Jenkins. Yes, I realize he wasn't their draft pick. He's still a second-round draft pick that has performed consistently, like they're probably their first or their second best offensive lineman. I would say that the only one that you could argue that has probably been better consistently has been Cody Weicker, right? So, and obviously he's hurt now, so we're going to have to see what happens. But that's where it's like, okay, you're in the middle of a rebuild, play your young guys, put them in positions to succeed, and figure out what you have. And this is something that I've been talking about all offseason. They have to get answers. And right now, and again, it's just 4 games into a 17-game season, but so far, man, they're, at least in my opinion, they don't got a lot of answers. And they got to figure out a lot of different things over these next, what would that be, 13 games. And I don't know, man. Like, again, it's still early, but at some point in time, they're going to have to start making some decisions. And I think one of those is going to be, Gordon needs to just be playing outside. I think the other one is, Tevin Jenkins needs to be starting at right guard. And I also think that they're going to have to make a decision with those tackles, because you can't have two tackles playing as bad as both of those guys are right now, especially in pass protection. You went out and you signed Riley Reif. It may be about time to give Riley Reif a look at one of those tackle positions if it's going to help your quarterback.
I feel so bad for Larry Borum and Braxton Jones, because let's take Braxton Jones to just pick one and focus on him, right? I don't think Braxton's been bad at all, considering what a 5th-round rookie normally looks like at left tackle. He's just going up against Kayvon Thibodeau and Nick Bosa and the best pass rushers in the NFL, for crying out loud. Like, when you go up against the Lions, congrats, you get to go up against Aaron Hutchinson. When you play the Vikings, congrats, you get to play whatever edge rusher they've got working, because I can't remember who it is right now. The Packers, congrats, Rashad Gary. Like, it is wild to me, the expectation versus reality that a lot of people have had for what a 5th-round rookie should look like at left tackle, because they're having to go up against the best players in the NFL. Borum, same thing. I mean, I see a comment in our chat here that talks about how Borum is a major problem. It's not that I disagree with you. He's just a 5th-round sophomore. I mean, pedigree matters with these things, Aaron. I get that everybody jokes around when the Bears sign somebody or trade for somebody like N'Keal Harry, who's like, oh, he's a former 1st-round pick. But usually the guys that are drafted that high have talent, i.e. Tevin Jenkins, who every time he steps on the field, especially in run blocking scenarios, looks like one of the best offensive linemen the Bears have, because he was drafted the highest. They have talent when you get drafted that high. And I feel like both of these tackles are kind of getting hung out to dry. It's not that the Bears are doing nothing schematically to help them. They're certainly trying to help, or to send pass protection their way, whether that's chips, rubs, or anything else. Herbert is a pretty awful pass protector. I think we watched him see an unblocked edge rusher just walk right by him for one of the sacks. So, I mean, that is a real Achilles heel. You can tell why he's not a starting running back every time he's in these 3rd down scenarios, because it's just not his game. He's a pure runner. But it is a little bizarre to me that the Bears have, by all accounts, an average left tackle just riding the bench as Fields takes hit after hit after hit from the blind side. I mean, I can't fault Fields for the fumble that he had today. Maybe I'm being an apologist, but when you get beat in about 2.4 seconds and the edge rusher is able to touch the ball on your windup, I don't really think it's the quarterback's fault, because I've watched Aaron Rodgers fumble that ball. I've watched Kirk Cousins fumble that ball. I've watched Tom Brady fumble that ball. I've watched way too many good quarterbacks, when their left tackle just gets smoked, give that same ball up, for me to say that a blindside strip sack like that is the quarterback's fault. And so if I sound like a Fields apologist today, I thought this was his best game of the season. This is the most hope, this is a very nice piece of hope, but boy, oh boy, the line needs to figure something out, because I thought by the time Patrick came in at left guard, he looked bad. I thought the pass protection in general, like, Aaron, the All-22 is going to tell us a lot, because either the Bears thought that they would be able to block up all these blitzes. Some offenses do this, where they deliberately don't have a hot route, because they say, okay, we're ready for 6, and if 6 comes, then we're going to just block them, and we'll take our 5 against their 5. Or I guess it's our 4 against a 5-man coverage net. That did not happen for the Bears today, as in multiple situations, it looked like an extra runner bled through the blocking scheme, where 6 would attempt to block 6 and 1 would lose, and suddenly Fields was rolling way out to his left, throwing the ball away, and it's another incompletion against and a blown play. It was gross out there. Did you see the same?
I did. Yeah, they've got so much to get figured out right now offensively, and I don't even know where they're going to start, but they've got to start somewhere. And I think that the tackle position, especially if Cody Whitehair is going to be out long term, I mean, the reality of it is anytime you're ruled out that early with a knee injury, it's never a good sign. But they've got to start doing something and figuring something out. And, we'll see what happens. But all right, man. Well, hey, I got to get going, because I've still got a few different deadlines here I got to meet.
You bet.
Plus dinner. Yeah. So
thanks
awesome.
So much for
yeah.
What's coming, Aaron? Plug.
I don't even know, man. I just do the same. I do the same things, for Bear Report and Windy City Gridiron. Every week is basically the same thing. You got a mailbag and 10 thoughts or 10 takes from Windy City Gridiron, and you got winners and losers and what to watch for with the Bear Report. So yeah, just pretty much just chugging along, and it's always tougher when they when they lose these kind of games, and you don't want to talk about them for very long. But here we are, man, in the midst of a rebuilding season. These are what make the winning seasons, covering this team more fun, I guess, right?
Right, exactly. Thankfully, there's something positive to look out for. Aaron, thanks so much for joining me. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me on.
You bet. All right, well, Bears fans, the podcast isn't over because we didn't talk about Eddie Jackson yet, and I was not allowed or about to let that opportunity pass me by. Number 4 has been stellar. I feel like I have at times been popping crazy pills over the last 2 seasons because Eddie Jackson has become or went from favorite to underperformer to bad, and he has been phenomenal. While the All-22, I think, has vindicated him in 2020 and 2021, I might go so far as to say that Eddie Jackson is the piece that is holding this defense together. He bailed Kyler Gordon out on an interception today that I don't think most center fielders get to, and he rolled up and took that ball away, as well as a couple of huge tackles throughout the game. There was a huge one early in the game in particular where Saquon Barkley blasted through the hole, was wide open, and all he had to do was shake Eddie Jackson, who was coming in at an angle. Those tackles are tough, but Eddie Jackson was able to break down, wrap up Saquon Barkley, and bring him down. Yes, we're talking about a 15-yard gain. I hear ya, but as a safety, okay, so do we Bears fans all remember the 56-yard gain that Khalil Herbert had last week? That's because Herbert, shaked and baked the safety and immediately picked up 30 more yards. A safety, especially when you're in cover 1, cover 3, which the Bears have been in a lot, has to make that tackle or it's a huge gain. So Eddie was able to, I don't want to immediately say save a touchdown, but we are talking about Saquon Barkley. So little plays like that where you cut a chunk play down to a good play is huge. We also had a nice little game from Kendall Vildor, number 22, who I think has fit cover 2 really, really well. Cover 2 is a slightly more simplified scheme. It puts you on an island a little bit less than plenty of the other offenses or defenses that you will run, and I think 22 has played really well within this cover 1, cover 3, cover 2 scheme as a zone corner. Honestly, he hustles to the ball. He is the epitome of hits, and I think that works well for him. I felt like Herbert was fairly pedestrian today, but there really wasn't much to block on the offensive line. I don't really know where Getsy's run creativity went, as we talked about earlier in the show, but it was a little bit of a bummer to see such a banner day against Houston, partially because they really were calling everything that they could. They brought the whole toolkit out against the Houston Texans, and you don't run for 241 yards or 281 yards on accident. And then today, it felt like almost all the runs were just basic gap runs, basic inside zone runs. Kind of felt pretty elementary. And so I don't know whether part of that was the fact that they were in the Meadowlands. I don't know whether part of that is because Cody Whitehair got hurt and they didn't feel like Patrick and everything else, or Patrick and the rest of the line were ready to play together. I know offensive lines need time to gel, but overall, I really did come away from this game, final thoughts wise, much more upbeat than I did last week. I get it. The Bears lost. I know. And that's a bummer. But the Bears right now, I don't think are set up to win a championship. I think that the way that the Bears get closer to winning a championship is Justin Fields showing us strides, whether or one way or another, and the coaching realizing what they need to tailor and figuring it out, while the Bears, I hate saying this, probably lose games. This kind of loss, where Velus Jones drops a punt at the end of the game and a potential game-winning drive immediately dissipates and the Bears just lose, are how you get a little bit closer to Jalen Carter without necessarily seeing Fields sink the ship. It's bizarre in 2 weeks to go from Fields is the only reason that a win was almost a loss to Fields was the lone, or Fields and Mooney were the bright spots on an offense that really, really struggled personnel-wise today and seemed to lose matchups left and right. But you know what? That's just where we are this season. We're going to go back and forth for a little bit, and that's okay. We've got 13 more games to try to iron some of this stuff out as Justin Fields tries to provide us answers, and hopefully by the end of the year, we've got some kind of answer one way or another. But I'm starting to wonder if we really are going to. I mean, I don't want to wish murky question marks on anybody, but it is not unlikely, looking at the schedule now, taking both of these last two games into account. Last week, the Houston Texans, second best rushing attack in the NFL to that point because of great games against the Packers and the Texans. The Bears looked like they might just jimmy their way to 8 to 9 wins. A loss like this against the Giants, where the Bears look extremely beatable, and suddenly all those 3-13, 4-13 predictions come to mind. It's likely that the Bears land around 6 wins. It's likely that Justin Fields hopefully takes some steps forward. I hope that his quick decision-making continues. I want to see him get the ball out a little bit faster on not only that RPO, but the rollout that he had where he threw that snipe to Dante Pettis that got tipped away. Get that ball out just a little bit faster, and it's a nice catch. Instead, it was just a smidgen late, and so the safety was able to range over and push the ball away. That was a really, really accurate pass. It's just got to be a little bit faster. These are great things for a young quarterback to build off of, even if the results aren't quite what we wanted. But we're just going to have to wait and see. Next up, the Bears take on the... Oh, there's something I'm going to need to fix because I don't actually know. Let me see. Oh, there it is. Next week, the Bears take on the Vikings. And that'll honestly be quite a game, as I don't know what the Bears are going to do to lock down Justin Jefferson or the Vikings rushing attack that really isn't all that bad. Maybe, just maybe, they end up finding a way to win against the Vikings, who just survived on account of a double doink. Don't bring up the bad memories. But overall, this game, much more fun one to break down on the All-22. Can't wait for Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Keep an eye on my Twitter at Robert K. Schmitz, as I'll be going through the All-22 as early as tomorrow afternoon, more than likely. But it should be a whole lot of fun because I felt like the Bears came away with some really positive things this week. I think that the defensive line is going to have problems, but we've been saying that for a little while. So until next week, everybody, bear down, and thanks so much for bearing with me. And we are clear on the recording. So how'd you guys feel? I mean, I've seen you guys chatting all throughout the game, but wanted to make sure that I came in and just let's take temperature, right? How you feeling? Because let's see, barely beating Houston and losing to NYG tells me where our team is. J2K, I completely hear you. If the staff is going to continue to rotate RG in December, I'm going to be out on Eberflus. You're not going to be alone. That's for sure, Steven. Like, there are some weird plays or like weird decisions happening on this Bears offense right now. Honestly, all over the Bears roster. And I feel like it's kind of tough to pick out. Let's see. I just want us to win 3 or 4 games so we can have the 3rd or 4th pick and get a top tackle in the first and a top wide receiver in the second. I hear you. The Nile Nation. Is it the Enile Nation or the Nile Nation? Dabble openly pants the Bears with NYG backups, Robs. Yeah, Jordan, that's not surprising. I loved Brian Dabble. I made that so clear in the breakdown we did. I fell in love with Daboll's tape. This is unsurprising. Not only that, but for crying out loud, can we just mention that Brian Daboll came in to New York, gave up play calling, handed it off to Mike Kafka, a perfectly qualified offensive coordinator, and immediately built an offense that would weaponize Daniel Jones as much as possible, despite the fact that I don't think that they're necessarily committing to Daniel Jones. I mean, Daboll has been the picture-perfect head coach through 4 games so far, in terms of personnel, in terms of decision-making, in terms of setting his guys up for success, in terms of how you do it. I think that what we're going to see going forward is that this concept of a coach that will immediately give play calling up, that a coach that's going to immediately give play calling up so that he can focus on game management is going to become really popular. I think that Nagy, a lot like, so I was going to say, I think Nathaniel Hackett, a lot like Matt Nagy, is a reminder that the guys that can call plays are rare. And so it's going to, I love what Dable's doing. I really do. Brandon, I don't think Nagy's tenure scared the front office away from Dable. If you want my honest opinion, like, I get the impression okay, so take a look at the Brian Flores lawsuit, right? When you look at what's going on there, the concept was that Dable always had the New York job. Then you've got these rumors out there that the Giants had Shane ID'd for the job as early as like December, maybe earlier. I don't know the answers. We're talking about baseless rumors that you could find on Twitter and whatnot, but it just wouldn't shock me if Dable was never actually available and that he was picked for the Giants coaching job as early as who knows. And so I take a look at that kind of thing and I just beg the question. I say to myself, okay, well, if that's where we're at from a hiring perspective, am I happier with that than I am with the Bears hiring Nathaniel Hackett? Like, would I have taken Eberflus over Kevin O'Connell? Would I have taken Eberflus over Dan Quinn? Yes. Would I have taken Eberflus over Jim Caldwell? Yes. Like, I end up thinking that without Dable, the coaches, like the head coaching candidates, just weren't as glittery as I wanted them to be because I thought Dable was the true crown jewel. Let's see, Carlos. What do we talk about? Gordon and Velas look like busts. Velas has fielded one punt badly and a couple punts fine. Like, I'm with John here. Velas looks like a third-round talent and a bad offense. I mean, we the Bears offense today was super bad, and we were bad for a lot of reasons. I understand that everybody's looking at Fields' completions saying, okay, well, he only threw a couple that weren't screen passes, and I'm like, have you guys looked at Russell Wilson's early tenure? Russ happened to play on like good teams. I mean, I understand that there's a little bit of a difference here, but Russ's game has always been 8-yard curls, screens, and intermediate to deep passes with a lot of running, especially early in his career. Like, I understand that we're not talking about the same player, right? But people expecting a West Coast offense, people expecting slants and arrows, dragon, other like West Coast concepts within that, it's not really what Fields does. Now, I know Jordan's about to say, what about RPOs? And I agree. I don't really know where the RPOs are. And I'm hoping that Fields can show a little bit more, that Fields can get the coaches to trust him so that he can work those in. But within the concept of today's game, look, this is going to make me sound like a truther. And so I don't want to sound like a truther, but when we go through the All-22 breakdown this week, it will stun me if I don't count at least like 5 throwaways. And then there were 2 passes that were batted down at the line of scrimmage, and I always feel weird pinning those on the quarterback because most of the time, if it's a quick throw, you're expecting your offensive line to at least down block the defense and just get it out there. The Illinois Nation, why don't we run mesh or sluggo with an intermediate in and flat route? They did run mesh at one point, and Field scrambled on it because pressure hit immediately, and that was the 3rd and 2 that he picked his way forward and slid and then took the hit. His slides are terrible, by the way. I mean, I guess they're generating 15-yard penalties, but if he's actually trying to not get hit, he's doing a bad job of it. But today's game was a weird one because statistically Fields looked, I mean, his completion percentage is like laughably bad, but I don't really feel like he was inaccurate. Maybe a little behind on the occasional play, but I felt like in this game in particular, I would have expected Mooney to catch that pass. I would have expected, I think it's Wingo, 88, Trey Wingo, to catch the dump off that he had. It's not as if I'm trying to sit here and say, 11 for 20, so much better. But between a couple of screens that got batted or dropped, between tight contested throws where the receiver didn't come up with the play, I mean, I believe Daniel Jones threw all of 8 passes today, so it's not like, I don't know. I mean, I feel so weird talking about this one because semantically, I feel like Fields played pretty well. Like, I think that's the simple way that I would say it. Yeah, Wingo, it's Wesco. Thank you, Akusai. I was like, that feels wrong. But I don't know. Like, I look at this. Let's see. What do I think is wrong with Kmet? I think Kmet's always been Kmet. I mean, people keep saying, what's wrong with him? And I'm like, this is who he is. We've been talking about this for a while. Like, say what you will. Nagy got the most out of Kmet. Like, 550 yards, that looks like a tough assignment to breach. I was excited. So on the tight end screen where Kmet picked up the yardage, I thought the Bears set that up really well. On the tight end screen where Cole Kmet got hit immediately, I don't know where the lineman was, because normally a lineman's supposed to get that guy, right? The first one to the play, normally a lineman's supposed to jump out and stop him. And so I don't know where that was, but that's not really Kmet's fault, so to speak. I think Kmet is a second-round pick that plays like Ryan Griffin. I mean, that's honestly, Ryan Griffin's actually a really awesome blocker, and I think Kmet's a better receiver, but I think it's hard to find a difference-making tight end because the guys that are good are amazing, and the guys that aren't amazing just look normal. And a lot of these guys, like, scheme gets them open all the time. It's not as if I think that if you substituted Robert Tonyan in the Bears offense, that suddenly the tight end position would pop off. I think if anything right now, what I think about this Bears offense is that over the last 2 weeks, their passing offense is really struggling with protection. I mean, John, is our scheme a problem for tight ends? I think tight ends need at least 2 to 3 seconds to get protection. And last week, just like this week, it felt like whenever the Bears were in a key passing down, their tackles would get shuttered, or somebody on the interior would just get woofed. Like on this game, it felt like what is his name? What Wink Martindale was really doing was he was consistently sending 5 rushers and occasionally sending a 6th. And so he was just forcing a bunch of one-on-one matchups. He wasn't actually trying to use what you might call an overload blitz, like an extra guy, right? That to me at least, right? But there are some people who think blitz and they think free runner. Sometimes you do, right? But a lot of blitzes are just to get Braxton one-on-one and Cody one-on-one and Mustapher one-on-one and Patrick one-on-one, because for some reason he plays a lot, and then also Borum one-on-one, and test all 5 of them, right? And when you get Mustapher one-on-one, he's losing a lot. And Patrick lost a lot. And it felt like Jenkins got beat a couple times. The tackles are the tackles. Like within this, yeah, exactly, Brandon, sometimes they win all of them. But it's like the trouble with this is that when you've got a good offensive line, like say the Eagles, you might block all 5 of those guys, and now they're down 1 in coverage. And so normally your quarterback has a much easier time passing or scrambling. I don't think Fields is going to get enough credit from the people who are killing him over his box score completion percentage numbers. Okay, can we talk about this? Mitch had high completion percentage, and I felt like a lot of his completions were meaningless. I would rather, just going forward, into the future, I would rather pick up a first down than not pick up a first down. So if my choices are Justin Fields kicking it to the running back on 3rd and 10 and the back getting tackled for a gain of 5, or Fields pulling the ball down and picking up 10 yards, I will take the latter, and I think all of us would. Like, Mitch always had really good completion percentage, and I always talked about how completion percentage doesn't matter. I get it. 9 for 20. Like, I know. And I'm not about to say that, like, this is the kind of thing that you could just build off forever. But I will say that I felt like that Fields' completions, especially the intermediate ones, really did matter. I mean, his throw to Mooney, really good. His throw to Pettis on the sideline that got tipped away, really good. His throw to Pettis that also, like, Pettis didn't catch, that was awesome. That might be Fields' best throw of the season so far. Like, I mean, that was a standing rope right over the top, like over the top of a defender whose back was turned to a receiver who got his hands right to it with plenty of ability to catch that. I mean, that was sweet, and it did not get caught. Like, that was it. There's a lot of this stuff that when we talk context, when I entered this season, these were the games that I wanted, because on the L22 breakdown this week, assuming that the All-22 looks like I expect it to, we can talk about the growth of a young quarterback. We can talk about somebody developing within an offensive structure that may not be perfect, but he's still showing you that he's getting a little bit better, especially after an awful performance last week. This was a huge step forward, and honestly, I think the Texans are worse, so the fact that he did this against a defense that was, I think, doing more to take things away from Fields is really cool, because it showed that in the face of adversity, he was able to step up and make plays, and his offense didn't live up to him, and we'll take that, because Dante Pettis isn't the future of the Bears wide receiver core, and Equanimeous St. Brown isn't the future of the Bears wide receiver core, and hopefully Sam Mustipher isn't the future of the Bears offensive line. And honestly, I'm not trying to dunk on the guy. If the Bears can upgrade over Braxton Jones this offseason, I don't have any problem with it. If you can sign a Jack Conklin and Elton Jenkins or some of these guys to take Larry Borum's spot over and then draft somebody else, sure. No, you're not going to get any contesting from me on that. And so I look at a lot of this, these are the games that I wanted. Last week's game, it took me until Tuesday to even start watching the All-22 because I was honestly really depressed over it. You should ask my wife, who, it was embarrassing. I'm a grown man, and I was sulking around the house all Sunday night and all of Monday because Fields had played so badly, and it had really shaken my confidence because I didn't expect Fields to look like that in a game where things were so open for him. That was a game that Fields should have smoked everybody. The throw to Kmet, not even some of the throws to Mooney, that was a bad game, especially from the broadcast tape. The All-22, as usual, pretty favorable to quarterbacks. Quarterbacks is a really hard position. But in this game in particular, even from the broadcast standpoint, it felt like Fields was finding a way amidst an offense that wasn't doing much to help him out, and that's all you can ask for. If you are going to hope, I'm hoping for it, but if you are hoping for a Josh Allen type jump forward, then these were the games that you wanted to see. Jordan, I completely understand what you're saying. I just don't know how to express patience with this staff. LTAC, thanks so much for subscribing. The staff has put the Bears fans in a really weird spot where I feel like Bears fans have seen this movie before, right? Where, is this a Lovie Smith? Honestly, Jordan, this looks like the Bears hired Lovie again, if you ask me. Now, games like last week make the Bears look like maybe John Fox is a better word. I hope not. That would be a real bummer. But last week's kind of game makes the Bears look like they might have hired Pete Carroll. This week's game makes the Bears look like they might have hired Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll has definitely not made a lot of friends among Seahawks media members because, Carlos, to your point about John Fox, the good defensive head coaches that have good, the good defensive head coaches, honestly, I'll use Tomlin and I'll use Carroll here, tend to have great talent, right? But gracious, the Bears' talent right now is woeful. I'm always bummed, personally, Jordan, when we can't do, they're never going to do exotic fire zones as much as I would like them to. That's just, if it wasn't ever done before 2010, then it's not done in this defense. I don't even know if they use the word match. I would assume they do, but there's so much of this stuff from a terminology perspective that literally looks like old Bears tape. And it can be kind of frustrating because that just means the book is literally out on how to beat it. I meant what I said on the podcast, where the good news is this defense is pretty solid at holding teams to under 30. The bad news is this defense is not very good at holding teams to under 20. And I don't think that that's going to change anytime soon. The Packers actually cycled a bigger, the Packers were evidence to a potential bigger problem because, wow, they tore us up. The Packers looked like they could have hung 40 on that defense. They just botched 2 mesh points and fumbled. The Bears didn't even make a play. The Packers just fumbled the ball twice and killed drives. And so I'm with you, Jordan. If I got to choose, to me, the name, I get it. I'm a Baylor homer. Of course I would say this, but the name that I would pick for the ideal Bears coach would probably be Dave Aranda. because I get the impression that the Bears will always value defensive perspective over offensive perspective. And at this point, I need to just accept it, because the offensive hires, when the offensive hires are Mark Trestman and Matt Nagy, who I think Matt Nagy gets way too much hate for being one of the winningest Bears head coaches in a while. I get it. Horrible offense. Not trying to go too far to bat for him, but at least he did something right to win some of those games. But Dave Aranda is a bleeding edge Bears style defensive head coach that does everything modern under the sun. Tight fronts, fired zones, developing quarterback, heavy play action. Dave Aranda went for 4 fourth downs in his own territory in yesterday's game, and they got a couple of them that almost turned the game around. Like, Aranda would be a great hire, but that implies Flus getting fired, and that's already talking about bad. Like, at this point, we're just talking about other stuff. Like, it's going to be weird, because I think that if Josh Allen didn't develop like he did, people would be critiquing John McDermott the same way. I mean, the Bills have a lot to believe in, and the Bills act like a team that has a lot to believe in, and the Bears right now act like that the Bears honestly just act like they're a team that thinks they're right about to lose. And that's fine for now. The question becomes, once they invest, do things get better? Because it hurts, exactly like you're saying, Brandon. Like, Josh Allen is a cheat code. And is Mooney not a wide receiver one? I don't think he quite is. Days like today were helpful. I mean, he did shake open a couple times, and Fields was able to hit him for big gains. All that, like, we do everything together stuff, it really felt like it showed today. But it's tough, because I think Allen, like Tyler Lockett in Seattle, is a much better wide receiver 1B, where I think Mooney can produce like a legitimate wide receiver 1. He just needs an X receiver to take some of the pressure off of him. And once he can get out of a bracket, for instance, he's going to shake open a lot. It's weird, because when Mooney had A-Rob, he won a lot of one-on-one matchups. I mean, yes, he got force-fed the ball, I'm aware, but it's hard to catch for 1,000 yards, and it's really hard to catch for 1,000 yards between 3 receivers. Honestly, Jordan, maybe. I mean, DJ Chark, Bryan Edwards are probably the floor of what you want, but they help, certainly. I mean, even somebody like Alec Pierce could have been perfectly fine. George Pickens, obviously. We got Kyler Gordon. I'm with Andrew. I think that saying Gordon is a bust is way too premature. I just think, John, the Amari Cooper thing's going to haunt me for a little while. I feel like that was staring Pauls in the face. I mean, I get it. He's expensive, but for like a 5th-round pick, getting a really premier X receiver, I feel like that was low-hanging fruit. I get the impression Pauls was waiting for him to get cut and just got rookie GM'd, learned on the job way too quickly. I'm with you, J2K. We don't have an X. Wide receiver 1 is a weird terminology. I just get used to it. If there's any way that the Bears could do something like pry away Chase Claypool, I'm fine with. Let's see here. I don't know. I doubt the Bengals would trade T. Higgins, but I mentioned him last week. I'll mention him again. There are players across different teams that, as wide receiver salaries just start going up, that you'd think that you could go out there and find a wide receiver that is on a team that doesn't have the funds to pay him. I mean, Michael Gallup's not a bad example, though I believe he got re-signed to a pretty hefty deal on his part. There's a lot going on in the wide receiver market where the Bears are probably gonna have to trade for somebody, and I think they'll want to, but I don't think they'll want to trade a 1st-round pick. That's just my guess. Do I think Nikhil will play well when he gets healthy? So all I know, Enile, is that everybody that I've talked to on the Patriots beat, because I've got a couple friends over there, have said that N'Keal Harry looks like a beast in practice, and you put him in a game situation. He looks like a beast in one-on-ones, and then you put him in a game situation, and he does not look very good. Chad Howard, best wide receiver from the upcoming class, depends on where the Bears pick, because if I can be honest with you, right now I'm focused on the season. I'll start to get into draft prep around late November, receiver or something like that. So I can't give you an educated opinion, especially because if the Bears go 5-12 and they end up picking in the high top 10s, they'll probably draft a receiver. So if the Bears are 8th or lower, they'll draft a receiver. If the Bears are 7th or higher, they're going to draft a defender. That's my guess. That if they, like, whether it's Bote, whether it's Addison, whether it's Smith-Jigba, who I don't think fits Fields very well at all, I think that if they get into the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 region, that they'll have a very good receiver that falls on the board, and most of their defensive studs will already have been picked. But the higher they get, the closer they get to Jalen Carter, the closer they get to Will Anderson. Like, I got you, Chad. Thank you. Like, I think that they're going to want that edge stud. I think that they're going to want that defensive line stud. They want DeForest Buckner. They want Logan Hall. Like, Jordan, if you're still in the chat, it is hard for me to believe that had Hall not fallen to 39, or that had Hall fallen to 39, that they wouldn't have drafted him. Like, just to pick a name. I honestly, I think that they are going to draft a defender. I mean, the Bears went defender twice in these last 2 picks. They need an engine inside this defense. They need a 3-tech that can stop the run. Justin Jones is not that guy, and that's okay. We knew he wasn't that guy. I like to hope we knew he wasn't that guy. I mean, every offseason without fail, somebody will tell you that that Equanimeous St. Brown is going to go for 500 yards and that Justin Jones is going to be a beast. I mean, truly, in the offseason, in the dead of the offseason, it is hard to be positive about the Bears, because every time you say, hey, I think Velus could be a pretty solid gadget player, and if the Bears could get their passing game going, it wouldn't surprise me to see him catch people deep a couple too many times. And then all of a sudden, somebody goes, yeah, you mean he's going to be like an 800-yard receiver, right? And you go, no, that's not what I said. And, like, talking about strengths and weaknesses just gets tough, because as soon as you say, hey, I think this guy might be pretty good for a 5th-round tackle, people go, oh, so he's going to be an all-pro? And you go, no, probably not. And so, like, I do think that when it comes to watching these Bears going forward, we got to make sure we're realistic. And realistic to me looks like Bears' offensive line is underfunded. The defensive line is also underfunded. So they're either going to go sign Fletcher Cox for like a twilight run in his career. They're going to sign, oh my gosh, is it Onyemata? Is that the way he pronounced his name? From New Orleans? Is a very solid player. Like, there are some dudes that they could sign on defensive line, on offensive line, not quite at corner, but they could find some linebacker help. They could even potentially add some TD or like some TE help, tight end. But the receivers are not great. Then again, everybody was making fun of the Jaguars for signing Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, and they have been exploding. Like, the Jaguars, it's such a bummer, isn't it? They signed an offensive head coach, retread or not, in Doug Peterson. And did they beat the Eagles? I know Lawrence got hurt today, right? Mark Davenport's he's going to stick around. He's the edge player. But so let me see. They didn't beat him, but they put up a really good fight against a very, very, very good Eagles team. Let me see here. Did Lawrence get hurt? Because they were up 14-0 before the game cut away. Let's see. Miles Sanders went off. Thank goodness for that. No, Lawrence finished the game, it looks like. But anyways, the point is that the Jaguars invested in offense. Lawrence has taken a step forward. Go figure. Like, that's normal. I mean, Tua, concussion scandal aside, a lot of investment in offense. Boom, he's better. The Eagles, they traded for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, because normally rookie wide receivers take a little bit to adjust. He took a step forward, and would you believe it? Now Jalen Hurts looks like a baller. Like, it's not surprising when you really start looking around the NFL. The Bills invested in offense. Josh Allen. Like, it's when you look at the best quarterbacks, unless they're Aaron Rodgers, normally, like, Aaron's kind of the only guy that really defies this. Exactly, John. You put talent around a quarterback and they get better. And so I do think that there's some of this stuff, like, the Bears have watched. Okay, so I'm going to say something that might be controversial. I think that the Packers org should almost be ashamed of itself that for how little they've achieved in the Aaron Rodgers era. There are a lot of Bears fans that look at quarterbacks and say, if you can find a good one, that good one will transcend your roster, that your roster will be lifted up by the quarterback. And Matt Stafford's a really good quarterback, now a Super Bowl winner. Maybe not amazing, but he never did that in Detroit. Kirk Cousins is a very good quarterback, not a Super Bowl winner, maybe yet, depending on how Justin Jefferson plays, but a very good quarterback, and he's never done that in Minnesota. Like Dak Prescott, very good quarterback, has never listed the roster up. Brady has lifted the roster up a little bit, but his last couple runs in Tampa Bay, that roster's just been juiced, baby. And normally, like going all the way back to Brady's last Super Bowl in New England, it's not like the offense was good. They scored like 17 points in the Super Bowl, and I believe they scored that 7th touchdown right there at the end. Aaron Rodgers is kind of the one who, during the regular season at least, he will take a bunch of nobodies and turn them into an almost MVP level season, and it's just crazy. Like, he's kind of the only guy. I would make the argument, because again, this is probably controversial, that Aaron Rodgers might just be the most talented quarterback to have ever played the game. Like, in terms of just understanding the position, but he's not the greatest. He can't be the greatest. One of these quarterbacks has won 7 Super Bowls on 2 different teams. Like that, it's just crazy what Brady's done. You can't make that argument. But I say that I talk about Rodgers within this, like because it has given Bears fans an unrealistic idea of what you should expect out of your quarterback. Like Rodgers has made us think that the guy has to look like a quarterbacking god, and I don't think that's attainable for even top 5 Hall of Fame candidate quarterbacks like Russell Wilson, like I'm trying to think of, like, Matt Ryan had his years. Like, there are tons of these. Matt Ryan had an MVP season in, was it 2019? Like the year after the Super Bowl. And nobody talked about it because the Falcons were like 5-11 despite Matt Ryan throwing for 4,800 yards. Like, again, it was the year after the 28-3 mess in the Super Bowl. Like, it is very normal for even the good quarterbacks to need major weapons around them. And the only guy who doesn't deal that way is Rodgers. And exactly, like, I agree with you, Kusai. And so I look at that. Yeah, exactly, Brandon. But so I look at that and I think to myself that within that structure, you got to give Fields some investment before you really start killing him. I want to take a look at Fields when he's in the second year of his offense. Look, guys, we don't have to pretend like the Bears offense looked particularly healthy today. It didn't. But even still, Fields took a step forward. And if Fields is going to get that Josh Allen treatment, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so long as there are performances like this where he didn't crack 200 yards. He took 6 sacks, and 2 of them weren't his fault necessarily, because I just hate the way they score sacks. When you roll out of the pocket, you stretch the ball forward, you gain maybe an inch, and they list it as a sack because it was a loss of 0, right? If you lose 0, it's not a sack, in my opinion, but they count. But so, like, J2K, you asked about FA names that can help our offense next year. I think that Alan Lazard makes way too much sense. I think that Elton Jenkins, if he gets out of Green Bay, is another one to watch. I think Nelson Aguilar would be helpful, though uninspiring, obviously. I think that DJ Chark is another name that you could target in free agency at X receiver. I think that Jack Conklin, the right tackle, is another one to look at. Remember, Jaleel, we're talking about free agency. I think that there are plenty of other offensive linemen, especially guards that, like, okay, so we saw what happened with Ryan Bates. Basically, I'm expecting there to be a couple of yards that show up that are like a couple of guards that get a little bit better over time and hit free agency and look really solid. Yeah, John, you're talking about Mike Gesicki, who I don't know if he would really fit in such a blocking heavy offense, but maybe they wouldn't be maybe they wouldn't be running such a blocking heavy offense. But let's see. Do I know what this defense is great at playing with leads? Yes, most defenses are. We have a subpar receiving core. Of course we do. I felt really bad, Darren, about Fields last week as well. But, okay, so let me be clear. Last week, it felt like investment might be putting lipstick on a pig, because Fields was bad enough last week. We don't need to change the script because of this week. That it felt like if you got him a bunch of wide open receivers, you might miss the fact that he wasn't actually getting all that much better, right? This week, it looked like, okay, get me a DK Metcalf that can go over that receiver, or like go over that defensive back and catch the ball that Dante Pettis dropped. Go get me a quick guy, somebody maybe quicker than Darnell Mooney, or maybe it's Mooney with a wide receiver one taking the taking the pressure off of him to run a short crosser so that Fields can dump the ball off on a blitz. Like, go get us an offensive line that can hold for a half second longer when a blitz comes their way, because they got smoked on a day like today. If you do that, what are we going to get by the end of the season? Because there are too many people inside the Bears organization that seem to be leaking as loudly as they can that they feel like this was Fields' rookie year, part two, just because of the way that he's having to shift from what he learned in last year's offense to what he's learning in this offense. You know what? I'm not about to say I can relate. I am about to say that they're not going to start Simeon under any circumstance. So might as well. Like, this is Fields' second year, yes, but this roster better emulates the 2019 Buffalo Bills, who, just to point this out, Josh Allen stats. Look, I want to make it clear early that Josh Allen is not about to. Let's see here. Are we still live? Good. The Bears are definitely not about to equal what's going on with Josh Allen, but in Josh Allen's 2019, he finished the year with 3,100 yards. So uninspiring, right? Like, I point this out because obviously this matters, because this is our standard of comparison here. But like, if we take a look at the game logs, like, that was a whole season. He played the whole year. He didn't throw for more than 3,100 yards, right? And when you actually take a look at these games, it's kind of surprising that he didn't, because it's like 250, 250, 240, 150, 169, 160. Like, this right here, this is like Fields' best game at the moment. So, like, I get the worrying. I don't want to make it sound like I don't. I do. But at this point, the Bears are definitely looking for Fields to kind of have a Josh Allen-like jump, because he entered his 2020 season with PFF and plenty of others saying, okay, come on, we know how this story ends. Like, Josh Allen's the next Mitch Trubisky, and he has not been. He has been awesome. So I agree, Carlos. I think Eddie Jackson is the best player. Let me see. Pick six Rodgers. Yes, that's what I'm saying, Akusai. I think, R.I.P. Biscuit. He went out as he came in week 4 of his, the rookie quarterback behind him's rookie season. I think, IMT1, I want Roquan to be the best player on the team. I think Jackson makes way more impact plays on defense. He had 2 sweet coverage breakups today. He had a nice tackle on downhill, and he collected an interception, whereas Roquan had 2 really nice TFLs, maybe just 1. And let me see, he had a couple missed tackles and nothing outside of that. No kidding. Okay, I hear you. It's going to be interesting to follow. This is the kind of game that gets me back in the saddle. Really. I think it's totally worth it talking about this. This is, let's see, did I talk about the coward punt on 4th and 2? I talked about a lot of coward stuff, Donald. Don't you worry about it. It was bad. Was it Brisker getting exposed that gave Jones all that open field? I mean, kinda. Really, the big problem, J2K, is that the Bears' defense is so bad against the run that they don't trust anybody up front, and so they're way overflowing to fill run gaps, to the edges, and that opens up a ton of bootlegging space. Muhammad sucks. Can't disagree. But he's going to keep getting playing time for no good reason. Jaleel, I agree that I want to see our linebackers with a better defensive line, but I don't know what that means you do with Roquan Smith, and I'm willing to take criticism for that. But Roquan is extremely, what don't I know, Jordan? Let's see, do I see Getsy even trust Fields? I thought today he did. like, or at least more so. Oh, AQM has been having really good Wednesdays. Yeah, I don't care about Wednesdays. But that's part of it, right? I mean, one of the other things that's worth remembering is that we don't see these guys in practice. There's a chance that Muhammad is a baller in practice, and that doesn't mean anything to us. Like, Fields might be a baller in practice. Jenkins may suck in practice. We don't know if Jenkins isn't like sleeping through the meetings to end up in this rotation with Lucas Patrick. We just see him play on Sundays and he looks pretty good. Like, fans at times have a really skewed image of a player or a situation because all we see are the results on Sundays and we don't see what's going on in practice. I don't know what's going on. Exactly, Jordan, right? I don't know what's going on when it comes to Fields in like OTAs. I don't know what's going on in all sorts of these situations. So some of the confusion that we get here, like, is Gordon better at nickel in practice? Do they feel like Gordon's right about to transition in practice? I don't know, but let's see. Question on that last play of the game. If Fields got the ball behind line of scrimmage, would he be able to forward pass? No. Once you cross the forward pass line, you're done. You have to lateral it from there. It makes me feel bad because I feel like the Bears actually had kind of a sweet lateral play going. I don't know if they were going to get in, but certainly they seemed like they had some momentum until Kmet dropped the ball, and that's just going to get the lightning rod right back on number 85. Feels like every other week, Kmet does something that makes everybody go, you gotta be kidding me. And like the drop that he had against Green Bay on stick, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see. NFL is a results-driven league, but I understand you have to go with what you see in practice. However, if a player practices well, plays poorly, how can you pick them over the opposite? I don't know, John, to tell you, because when I take a look at, or when you look at Eberflus's history, like him signing Al-Qadim Muhammad and him playing Al-Qadim Muhammad over more productive players, apparently that's a thing. Apparently it's normal. So I don't know what to say, other than apparently he does this a lot. Flus may love Al-Qadim Muhammad for all I know. But it's going to be really fun either way. Like, honestly, this is the season I wanted. I know what I'm about to say conflicts with a lot of people's opinions, but I want to see the season where Fields is the brightest spot on offense and the Bears find a unique way to lose, because now we don't end up because of what happened in this game. We did not see Fields fail on the final drive of the game. We saw the Bears run, RPO, run, and then punt, and then muff a punt to lose. Like, this is the kind of game where I think you can have legitimate hope for the future while still taking the L and improving your draft position. And to anybody who doesn't know me already, because Mickey Murph, I see you subscribed. Thank you so much for jumping in. Hopefully you're still in the stream. I missed that one because we don't have our alerts on during the podcast recording. I think that this is a rare season that the Bears have on their hands where their ownership is not going to pressure them to win quite as much as others. And I think that the guys that you can get in the top 8, top 6, top 5 of the draft they are potential franchise-changing players. And you end up with way more Quentin Nelsons than you do like Solomon Thomases, right? And the guys that you can just the guys that can just go out there and win you a game are found in the top of the draft. And if the Bears could get one of those guys, whether he fuels your defense, whether he fuels your offense, either way, you're probably feeling pretty good. Michael Allman says, everybody badmouths JF, but how many QBs could score under the pressure that JF is under? You mean like that kind of pressure? Like, like quarterback pressure. I think it would have been tough. I mean, I think Brady or Rodgers might have been fine, but that's because they're like West Coast quarterbacks. I mean, I think West Coast quarterbacks, I don't want to say they have life easy, but think Pat Mahomes in the Super Bowl the other year, right? Pat Mahomes was under constant pressure. Pat Mahomes did not look good because Pat Mahomes drops back. He wants time. He makes plays, right? And in this kind of scenario, it would favor the Andy Daltons. It would favor the Nick Foleses. It doesn't favor Justin Fields. I don't want to say it's like going to get Justin Fields killed. Thankfully, he's been pretty hardy so far, but he's taking a beating. That's for doggone sure. And I can't help but watch Fields play and find myself thinking about like a blend between Deshaun Watson and Russ Wilson in their early years, because I don't think Fields is quite as small or as agile as Russ was. Russ was crazy. Like, Russ was pre-Kyler, right? Where nobody had been that agile or that small at the quarterback position. And Deshaun Watson just threw his body around and took some ugly hits. And Fields is taking some ugly hits at this point. But he's also finding results on the ground. And I think results are more important. I mean, I don't want to say like, well, Jordan, I hope not, because RG3 was an injury waiting to happen by the end of his career, frankly, by the end of his second year. But the main thing that I think about with Fields is that right now I'm hoping that running the ball helps open up more passing options. But every time they show the broadcast angle of like one of his, or the like behind the play angle of one of the runs, it looks like a whole bunch of receivers are in man coverage and none of them separate. And it's like, oh gosh, who could have seen this coming? I mean, I don't know. We're going to have to see. Like, it was, because I'm with you, Jordan. And yet, I think that gets him more credit because it means he fought through it to get to the end of the game and still made some really solid plays. But he got beat up. Like, get that kid in an ice bath. Speaking of, let me see. So it's the Vikings and then the Thursday night game after that. Let's see. I honestly, like, I think that there are a lot of people. I'll close with this, because I got to go do baby things. And I got to get this podcast up. But so I tend to think that there are, let's see, running QBs don't have a long shelf life. Michael, you're correct. But I will say that I think that there are a lot of quarterbacks that we're starting to see. Justin Herbert and Pat Mahomes are not bad examples of exactly what I'm about to talk about, where they start as a running quarterback so that they can basically practice faster decision making. And then as they spend more time in the offense, a lot of those runs start to become checkdowns. Like, at this stage in Fields' growth, I can only hope that we see him progress and continue to play on time. As he goes up against the Vikings, I would hope that we can see him continue to play on time. A lot of the running quarterbacks that we see at this stage, like you are saying, it's, yes, when they're young, they run, right? But they grow into pocket passers once they settle down a little bit. They've got to get to the point where their clock pops, right? And they say, I got to do something, right? But, you got to make sure that you, there's three. There's Allen, Jackson, and Murray. You got to include Murray. But so the point is exactly, Kay, they can survive being drafted to a team that usually is not particularly good, but they learn that clock. They learn that I got to go. I felt like you saw that in this game, and I thought it played out really, really well, where you could tell Fields, his clock was popping correctly, where he was saying, okay, I got to go. Okay, I got to go. Okay, I got to go. It's 5 carries for 50 yards. Sure, not much to speak of, right? But within that, it's not like we saw with the Mooney play last week, where Fields lets a perfectly good combination just spoil itself on the smash corner, and then finally he comes off Mooney, and then he dodges 2 tacklers to pick up 29 yards. That's more yards, but that's not as important as some of today's plays where he drops back in the pocket, takes one look at the first receiver, takes one look at the second receiver, takes one look at the third receiver, says, I got to go, and gets out of the pocket to go pick up the yards with his legs. Yes, it's not a check down for a bunch of yards, which I think some people at this stage would rather see. I know. But I want to see Fields' clock working appropriately. I want to see him fit the ball like we saw in that play action pass that got deflected. I want to see him throw a seed that even if it's a little late, he had the right idea. He knew where he needed to go with the ball, and he got NFL'd. Like, I think Jordan and I have talked about this, Jordan Silvera, who's in the chat right now, we've talked about this like offline, but Fields is still learning what NFL Open is. Josh Allen, some of these other quarterbacks that come from universities that, aren't Ohio State, even Justin Herbert, who came from Oregon, or Pat Mahomes, who came from Texas Tech. They did not have the luxury of guys that got way, 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 way open. Justin Fields learned to play college quarterback with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. I mean, 2 first-round picks, studs, right? Going up against Rutgers at once a year, going up against Michigan State, going up against guys where he could be blindfolded, take the blindfold off after a second and a half and still throw to his first read, and he'd be just fine and dandy. Like, Fields is needing to learn NFL timing at this stage because, Illinois, exactly, Kusai. Like, I'm not trying to, like, disrespect Michigan State, but over the last 2 years, they were not particularly spiny, certainly not against Ohio State. Like, it's more me saying that Fields played against 4 teams, like Northwestern, Alabama, Clemson, and Illinois, actually, I remember, had a really, really solid defense, and those teams really tested him. Michigan, I think, tested him a little bit too. I don't know if I actually got that game on tape, but the point is that Fields didn't play near as many games against guys that were like actually locking the receivers down and actually pushing him to his second read as might meet the eye. And so Indiana is what I'm thinking of. Thank you. But so as Fields now sits in his, plays through his second season, he's still learning how to throw into a window that's tight, how to know when you got to release the ball, how to overcome what I think is a very natural hesitation for a quarterback with an arm like his, where in high school, he could just wait for somebody to be open and rip the ball. Nobody had the speed to keep up with a lot of the guys that he was playing with. Now in the pros, sometimes you just got to throw with anticipation. Sometimes you just got to rip. And I think he's learning it. I thought that a lot of his stuff today got better. I really did. With the interceptions that he had this year, do I think he's reading coverages any better? Last week, definitely no. But I think he is. Okay, so here's my 2 cents, right? Like, even last week, actually watching the All-22 and actually going through the All-22 with y'all, I ripped up a lot of what Justin Fields did, but I actually found it a lot more understandable. There weren't near as many situations where I thought Justin Fields was dumbfounded. I thought that there were a lot of situations where Fields would either trust Mooney too much or he wanted to see this or that come open, and then that guy didn't come open for him, which isn't to put the blame all on them. There were some, like that Mooney alert, that I thought where I was like, that's a bad idea. Throw the corner, work the combination. That's why the combination's there. You can't just throw the combination in the bin because you want to on 3rd and 10. But I do think he was identifying the Texans defense well. He was just awful. I mean, I don't know whether he woke up with the flu. I don't know whether he just had a bad day. I don't know whether the pressure got to him. I was surprised at how many mistakes when we watched the tape last week were more physical than met the eye and less mental. I expected to see a ton of bad coverage reads, but like you're saying, J2K, Fields read the field right. He's just way too slow getting rid of the ball. Kusai, maybe he did wake up at 4 a.m. too many times. In this game, I thought that Fields did a much better job. Granted, receivers got open for him, but he ripped the ball on time, probably triple the amount of times he did last week, which is like 6 times. But he still did it. I thought he got the ball out instead of... It's wild how many sacks he could have taken in today's game. Now, granted, that's not exactly a positive. But one thing that doesn't help anything, so to use a silly example, if is anybody here, you can raise your hand. I'm in it. Subscribe to JT O'Sullivan's Patreon, because he goes through Justin Fields' whole game fundamentally every week. One thing he said when Fields was on one of his rollouts against the Texans and he threw the ball away is he was like, Justin, make a play. You can. You're an athlete. Put a move on this guy. Go get the yards. And I had that ringing in my head as Fields tried to step around the edge defender on 1st and 10 in the red zone, because I'm pretty sure somebody in the Bears organization said, Justin Fields, you're a dude. Put a move on this guy. And he didn't, and he got sacked. And so whose fault is the sack? The coach. I mean, that's my opinion. Is it that Fields read the defense wrong? No. It's that Fields tried to make a physical play like a back when he's a quarterback, and I don't really want my quarterback having to run the ball. The only quarterback in the NFL, and I understand that everybody loves it when Lamar and Allen do this. I would be terrified to run Lamar and Allen because I feel like Buffalo is playing with the Reaper here. where they are one bad hit from Josh Allen dislocating his shoulder and annihilating a season. Right? Especially with all the other injuries that they have. Like they're teasing it. They are teasing it. The only quarterback that I would run consistently would be Kyler Murray. And that's because Kyler is a bizarre quarterback that is so fast that he doesn't get hit. You don't ever see Kyler Murray get hit. He chooses when to go down, and that's it. Like he's a blur when he holds onto the ball. He's so fast and so talented. Like it's awesome watching him and just envisioning the talent that he could or that he has, even if his results kind of show you that he would rather, get that extra prestige in Call of Duty than get that little bit better at quarterback. And that's okay. Like, he's absolutely bananas. But so he's probably the one quarterback that I would pick out and say, like, I'm down to run him. I don't really like running Fields. Now, there is a play that I would like the Bears to steal, and that's quarterback draw. I think that the more you call drop back passing, et cetera, within the framework of a Fields offense, the more open you get for take the snap, hop, go. It was open against Houston, and it's probably going to be open against all sorts of people, especially if you do it on like third and 5 or something like that. I really think that if you can do a play action draw, that you would catch a lot of defenses off guard. Maybe I'd probably need to test it in practice first. Like, just there's a lot of this stuff that if I have the idea, like I would love to get 11 guys lined up on defense and 11 guys lined up on offense and actually try it to make sure it works before we try to do it in a game. But quarterback draw is probably the one play that I think Fields could really succeed at, and I would like somebody to teach him how to dive head first, because I think that his slide is neither a good slide nor is it great at getting the yardage, but that's its own question. But John Treviso, you say lots of L's coming this season? Bring them on. Like, I mean, I think that the Bears losing a bunch of games ultimately helps them. I think games like today, people asked me all offseason, they said, how do the Bears lose a ton of games? And also, how do the Bears lose a bunch of games and also Fields looks pretty solid? This game, but a bunch. Like, especially if the defense starts getting kicked in the teeth, which is possible. I mean, if Jalen Johnson's injury lasts for a little while, then you work it out, you go from there. But at this stage, I look at the Bears. I'm excited about what comes next. No, his slides are not perfected. But I think that this game is going to be a lot of fun to review. I got to go. Any other questions before we hop out? Because I've seen a couple come in. Like, I'll give you guys a minute. But he slides late a lot. 100% IMT. Let's do final questions. The WCG guys are trying to get me to, let's see, solid, 25, 32 ranked. Reinhard, what are you talking about specifically? Like, what are we saying solid? Oh, do I still trust Getsy? I don't know. I've seen 4 games. Like, I think that the Bears' offensive personnel is a mess. I think it's hard to make an offense look good when your offensive line kind of sucks, especially when pass protecting, and especially when your running back can't pass protect at all. The 2 running backs that they have in Ebner and Herbert are very poor pass protectors, and so they can't necessarily draw up a lot of the long stuff that I think Fields is good at. And go from there. The Reinhardt, today in particular, I thought Fields showed some promise. Now, I can already hear Derek, who does not seem to be in the chat right now, and you, frankly, saying, we got to see more than this if we're going to get excited about it. And I know, but I do I think back to those Josh Allen comparisons, and at the very least I say, like, let's get there when we get there. I mean, if Fields can finish the season with a bunch of all-purpose yardage, or at least enough, and start to improve simple things like his touchdown to interception ratio, score more, please, then I think we may still have something. I mean, today was the kind of game that I expected to see. If you had flipped last week and this week's game, it makes more sense. Instead, we're looking at a game where I feel like Fields was very mentally tough and like bounced back after a strong perform or like a really, really, really bad performance. But instead of letting it eat him, it seems like he took a real step forward today, or at the very least played better. And like you're saying, John, talent does matter. We're the bottom of the league in the offensive talent. I'm not interested in making a bunch of excuses for Fields. Like, I'm not interested in that. Let me be clear. I'm not interested in making a bunch of excuses for Fields. This was just the quarterback I wanted to see all offseason. Played fast. Relatively, actually, I'm going to go beyond relatively. Very accurate when throwing the ball beyond 10 yards. Throwing short, still a little high. Did that at OSU too. Justin Fields has never been a particularly good short throw artist. Playing slow, still a little slow. But instead of being a full tick and a half behind, he was a half tick behind, and that blew up 2 plays and still completed enough. He got 1 deep shot downfield. He cashed in on it. He had a strong 3rd and 4 strike to Dante Pettis that he did not get rewarded for. He has actually taken a step beyond just rolling out and trying to run, but has now moved on to rolling out, drawing a defender, and trying to dump the ball off. Like, we are taking steps forward, and I can't help but think that that's a good thing. And like you said, Reinhardt, this is more in line with rookie Allen. I mean, we could take another look at Josh Allen, specifically statistically, because I think that matters, where in his first season, he was terrible. His yards per game were like 172, and Fields is not there yet. But he's getting there close. Took too many sacks today, as usual. The Bears' offensive line, in my opinion, looked particularly bad today. But I don't know. I want to evaluate the quarterback right along with y'all as we go. I think that Luke Getsy is leaving a lot to be desired. He definitely does not look. I mean, for as much Jordan, just to pick somebody who I know was excited about him, for as much as there were plenty of people that were down on Pep Hamilton has done more for Davis Mills than I feel like Luke Getsy has done for Justin Fields. I mean, at times this regime looks like they borderline almost have it out for Fields. Not that they would. That is a ridiculous thing to suggest. But sometimes the play calling is so tone deaf that that you wonder what on earth is happening. I mean, simple stuff, right? Why are we running on 2nd and 20 against the Packers? We converted it. Neat. Why are we doing that? The first game, like second and down was a rundown. Exclusively. Honestly, second down was a rundown in Green Bay. It's why the flea flicker opened up. I think Getsy has a lot of learning to do, Brandon, for sure. Musty was confused. Cody went out, and the inside linebacker blitz got them every time. Yes. I still don't know. Reinhardt, we're going to talk. I want to see the All-22 because I don't know. It looked to me like there was a bunch of these, that there was just a ton of plays where they identified an inside linebacker blitz, like whether it was Fields, Mustipher, I don't know. But they identified the inside linebacker blitz, and they should have had it, but Herbert or Mustipher botched it, and they ended up with nothing going on well. Like, a lot of that pressure that got them seemed like it was schematically supposed to be picked up, and that a physical, or maybe you call it a mental mistake, just blew it up. I don't know. I need to see the All-22 because if they were free runners, that's Fields' responsibility, and we need to check if there was a hot route because for some reason we just don't get to see that. But in lieu of not having that, we have to. All we get to do is look at the offensive line, who had the guys for it. They just kept getting beat, and you can't do that. Like, at this stage, we've got to. I don't know. I definitely don't want to act like the Bears are that Fields is like a sure thing. He's not. But today was a reminder of when people talk about Fields' potential, which I would like to ban that word. When people talk about what Fields could be and why do we have hope for this guy, I feel like today we saw a quarterback performance that if you could get that every week, you've got a solid quarterback. Like, the ceiling is, I don't even want to use ceiling, Brandon, because who really gets their ceiling, right? When people talk about, like, what are we building for? What is this guy supposed to be? If you can get Fields processing at a standard NFL level and you can keep some of the throws that he's making, like, I know I've mentioned it like 5 times at this point, but that throw on 3rd and 4 to Dante Pettis is a strike. I mean, you can't miss that. Any lower, and it hits the corner in the back. Any more behind, and Pettis won't get it because it's too far behind him. Any further out in front, he still won't get it. Any higher, he probably doesn't get it. That throw was perfect. The throw that he had on the rollout that got tipped away was perfect and super well defended, if a bit late. The throw he had to Mooney was sweet. Obviously, like the deep one that we're talking about. The other 2 intermediate ones that he had had were sweet. And even his bad throw was fine. Like that, I think that there's so many people that would talk about, oh, that throw's got to be better from Fields. The one that Mooney dropped on review. Do we remember number 10 just taking outs, like 17-yard out routes, and sending them into the sidelines? Like there was, when we used to complain about accuracy, we were talking about balls that were completely uncatchable, and that's not what we dealt with today. I thought the quarterback only missed on purpose, of which he did a lot. Like, I thought that throw on 3rd and 7 into the end zone was a throwaway. I thought like 4 other plays out of the pocket were throwaways. I thought that there was a ton of that stuff where when Fields right now sends a ball into the sidelines, he's throwing it away. At the very least, that's what it looks like to me, because he's too accurate on the throws where he's actually trying to target somebody. And it looks like he has that kind of command over the football, which is sweet. The question becomes, how much talent do you need to have to get more than 170 yards out of him, more than 12 points out of him, right? Like, I hear any Bears fan out there saying, okay, that's all great, but like, we can't just not have a short game. So is the short game really just going to be screens? Like, is it just going to be screens and running the ball? Because that sounds like a lot of that sounds like a lot of talent that you need to add, and just like, how are we really going to do that? And I'm with you, Jordan. I think that you could take more shots, measured shots, that is. I think that not all of your plays need to be some kind of a rollout, right? I think that the GM needs to go get somebody. I think the sooner the better. Like, if you can swing a deal at the deadline for a wide receiver, go for it, because I don't think you're going to find one in free agency. Like, if it's T. Higgins, if it's Calvin Ridley on the cheap, if it's, which would be ridiculous, by the way. Like, that's probably like plan C or something like that. There's a ton of these things that you could try to do that, let's see, they rate practice pretty high. Yeah, seriously. Like, Fangio looked bad in 2015. How can Getsy look good with this talent? Agreed, John. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff that we just don't know what they're going to do, because when you don't trust your offensive line, you don't have much going for you. DJ Moore or Terrence Marshall would be really solid adds. Like, you can do more than this. And if the Bears don't move Quinn and don't end up with a wide receiver, I think that that's something that you gotta look at with polls and say, you chose this. Like, I mean, we thought that they were going to add more than Riley Reif in the offseason. They didn't. Reif's on the bench, and the Bears offensive line isn't playing well. Like, there's sweet stuff that the Bears could look at doing, and they need to, because talent-wise, Dante Pettis is just not going to be your like wide receiver 2. He's not going to jump up and make a contested catch for you. Maybe Equanimeous St. Brown might, but this is an offense that I understand takes time to learn, but right now it looks like a mess. Today in particular. So in versus San Fran, I'm convinced Fields couldn't grip the ball. Against Green Bay, I thought the offense lifted Fields up. Against the Texans, I thought against the Texans, I personally thought that the offense carried Fields to a win. Today, I thought the offense let Fields down. I mean, that it's nice to say that. You know what I mean? Let's see. EQ had his chance today to moss the DB and didn't. Same with Pettis. Yes. Like, it's not that Fields had some kind of incredible game. It's that there are a lot of plays that you look at. Okay, so the Mooney catch, right? That was a drop. If memory serves, they picked up the first down afterwards, but that's rare, right? And in this offense right now, people are, in this offense, when somebody doesn't help Fields out, they obviously end up punting, and that takes more passes off the board. Like, if the Bears were converting more first downs, they probably would pass more. They aren't, and so they're not. Like, do you think his ball is looking slow? I agree, Reinhardt, especially on some of them. The rope he had to Pettis looked faster. I think that he got critiqued for throwing fastballs too often last year. Let's call it a guess that maybe it's mechanics, maybe it's just coming out kind of weird, but until we see a route get jumped and he throws a pick six, I'm going to assume that he's throwing the ball kind of slow on purpose to try to make it catchable. Call me, that could be insane. Was EQ the one on the sidelines? Because I agree, actually. That one, I thought he just should have thrown it earlier, personally. Like, maybe you rocket it later, but faster and more on-time decisions can do. I think personally that playing on time does more for your speed than throwing the ball harder, because when Derek Carr or somebody like pumps gas on their fastball, it can a lot of times result in drops no matter how big the arm is, because a receiver can only catch a ball at 60 miles an hour. It's harder to catch the ball when it pumps up to like 75, 80 miles an hour. But I digress. There's a lot to talk about, and we'll talk about it more on Tuesday. I'm about to throw my voice out just a little bit because I didn't bring water in. I don't know what I was doing. I'm going to get this podcast posted. So you guys have a great rest of your night. If you want to support the channel, that always helps. The closer, like that thing at the bottom here, right there, helping get a dedicated channel editor, that really does like help. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff that, whether it's becoming a channel member, whether it's donating, like I want to be able to make more content like that Velas breakdown, and it's hard to do because I just don't have a lot of time. And so, but mostly because Lester and JB have me editing Sack Watch and 10-minute drill, and I didn't even get time for Sack Watch. Lester still wants it up, so we're gonna have week 4 Sack Watch posted this week at some point. I'll try to find some weird time for it. But anyways, the more that you support us with likes, with shares, with anything, like, it really helps. I mean, it helps push forward towards sponsors, et cetera, so that we can get paid a little bit. Yeah, Lester, you're in here. That's the secret. Week 4 Sack Watch. It's gonna go off, but it'll be fun, and we're gonna have a great week. We're really excited about what's going on. Make sure you're liking. Make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you're telling people to subscribe. Make sure that you're just the best, because you guys are the best. So have a great rest of your week. Bear down. Can't wait to see you on Tuesday. I'm excited. I hope you're excited. And we're going to review some Bears football. So until then, bear down. And thanks so much for bearing with me.